Hey, what's up guys? John the Top here from FitPro Firepower, and this video is a review of the week that I've been talking about on social media, which has looked at how we shape a diet. So we're going to look at how to set your calories, how to set your macronutrients, how to balance diet and lifestyle, how to set refeeds within those parameters, and also how to actually go about making sure you get long-term fat loss. So the first stage is to create your calorie deficit. That is absolutely crucial because we need to make sure that you're consuming fewer calories than you're burning up. That will encourage your body to then delve into body fat for energy, and hopefully you will get leaner. So to do that, we need to know your total daily energy expenditure. That has four components: your base metabolic rate, which is essentially if you just laid out all day and didn't move, didn't do anything whatsoever activity-wise, your body is still burning calories because of brain function, because of keeping your internal organs going, and so on. So that is essentially your base metabolic rate. Then we add non-exercise activity thermogenesis. We call it NEAT to make it easier. That is essentially calories that are burned just going about your daily business. So maybe you're sat in an office, maybe you're doing a bit of gardening, maybe you're walking around the shops every day, maybe you're dog walking, maybe you're a labourer, so obviously your non-exercise activity thermogenesis, the calories you burn doing your work, is going to be a lot higher than somebody sat in an office. Then we add the thermic effect of food. You do actually sort of burn some calories eating food and digesting it as well. And then finally we add the exercise activity thermogenesis. So whether you're weightlifting, running, doing CrossFit or whatever, that is going to have a certain calorie demand, and that is all added together to come up with your total daily energy expenditure. I'm not going to go through the sort of details of that because you need to find a decent calculation. It's too complicated to go through on this video. If you want some ideas, then give me a shout and I can point you in the right direction. But either way, once we know your total daily energy expenditure, we're then going to create a calorie deficit of about 20 to 30%. So for argument's sake, if I find out that my daily energy expenditure is 2,500 calories, that's effectively my maintenance level. To put it simply, if I eat 2,500 calories and I burn 2,500 calories, my body fat's going to stay as it is. However, if I want to lose body fat, then if I create a deficit, like I said, about 20 to 30%, then that is a sensible deficit that's going to encourage my body to burn fat for energy, but it's also going to give me enough energy to go about my business, to do my exercise, and actually enjoy life as well. We're not actually looking to torture ourselves and create this really sort of low calorie deficit that's just torturous to get through. That is not going to be something that you're going to want to maintain. Okay, so we're going to take my daily energy expenditure, 2,500 calories, and we'll take, say, 20% off. That's a fifth, so take a fifth of 2,500, and that is 2,000 calories. So to encourage my body to burn body fat, I'm going to eat about 2,000 calories per day. I'm going to be in a deficit, and I'm going to start losing body fat. Once you know the calorie target for yourself on a daily basis, the next stage is to start thinking about macronutrients. So essentially we're talking about protein, carbohydrates, and fats. It's important that you get enough protein in because you need to make sure that you're actually maintaining or preferably building some lean muscle tissue. You don't just want to be losing scale weight and go, oh yeah, great, I'm losing weight, but you're also losing lean muscle tissue. Not only will you start to look pretty crappy, but you're also then going to start affecting your body in terms of metabolic rate and so on. So it's really important that you get enough protein in on a daily basis. We do need carbohydrates to fuel intense exercise. You know, if we actually want to look better and build a physique or a figure that looks good, sort of lean and defined and muscular for the guys mainly, then we're going to need to make sure we're getting enough carbohydrates to actually fuel our workouts. You're not going to look much better if you're so tired and exhausted and you've got no energy. You're not going to do very good workouts, so you're not going to see much change in body shape. We also need to get enough fats in because they play an important role in hormone production and the immune system and various other things that are going on within our brain and body. Okay, so all three macronutrients are important. So it's important that we don't get carried away and just say, oh, well, I'll just eat protein and some vegetables, and then that way I'm going to lose loads and loads of body fat. Of course, you will lose weight but you're going to find that you feel pretty crappy along with it. So to start setting these macronutrients, there's many different ways we could talk about this. You'll know people who have ate higher carbohydrate diets, higher fat diets. Obviously the keto diet is a bit of a buzz at the moment. We can talk about paleo and all these different kinds of diets, but essentially there is a good place to start where we say, okay, let's just get our calories and our protein right. Okay, so we know our calories from earlier. Now we're going to set protein at about 2.5 grams per kilo of lean body mass. If you've done your calculations right in the first stage of this video, then you will already know that your sort of weight and your body fat. You need to know that to make accurate predictions as to your sort of necessary calorie intake. So essentially what we're saying is everything that's not body fat is lean body mass, okay? And that is the weight you're going to use to calculate how much protein you need, okay? So taking numbers, for argument's sake, if I am 100 kilos and I am 30% body fat, then that means 70% is going to be my lean body mass. Okay, so 70% of 100 kilos is 70 kilos. So I would times 70 by 2.5, which is roughly in my head about 175 grams, I think. That is how much protein I'm looking to consume on a daily basis. At first, that is all you really need to know in terms of macronutrients. Get the protein in, the rest can be either carbs or fats. Don't worry about it too much. Keep it simple to start with. Get in the habit of hitting your calorie deficit. Make sure you're getting enough protein, and that will be enough for many people for a good few weeks, even a good few months. If you want to take things a step further, then what I recommend in terms of getting your fats and carbohydrates set is to set your carbohydrates at about 50 to 100 grams per day. That will give you enough to run your brain and also enough to go and do a decent exercise session, and then the rest will be fats. Okay, so you're going to set your calories, you're going to set your protein, you're going to set your carbohydrates, and then the rest is going to come from fats. Okay, so you need to just scribble all this down, work it out. It might sound a little bit complicated, but actually when you write it out, it's pretty simple to do. And then you will know how much you want to be aiming for on a daily basis. And then you can use something like MyFitnessPal to track how much protein and fats and carbs you're getting from each meal, and then adapt accordingly. Okay, so you don't have to be exactly bang on the money. Don't worry if you're a few grams out every day, but once you have that target, it makes it a lot easier to create a nutrition plan that, like we said, helps you burn body fat, but also gives you enough energy as well so you can work out, go about your daily business and feel good along with it. Now, part 3 is to do with how many meals you should eat per day. Again, Google this and you're going to see all sorts of internet arguments about, I do intermittent fasting, so I just eat lunch and dinner. I do a warrior diet style approach, so I'm just having a large, more of a feast in the evening and I nibble throughout the day, or maybe just drink amino acids or something like that. Other people say I have 3 square meals a day, other people have 4. And then you get the bodybuilder type saying, well, I have to eat 6 meals a day. There is no real reason from a calorie deficit point of view as to why you should eat 1, 3, 4, 6 meals a day. It doesn't really matter. Okay, so you need to find what works for your lifestyle. For instance, if you're really busy in the morning, the kids are playing up, you're getting ready to get them to school, you're getting ready for work, you're rushing around, the odds are that you're not going to have time to make a nice sort of omelette, add your spinach, sit down and eat it. It's not necessarily a problem, okay? If your nutrition is good at lunch and is good at dinner and you're hitting your calorie deficit and your macros, then that is perfectly fine, okay? The stress of trying to force breakfast into your day is not necessarily going to help. You should consider things like, if you are missing breakfast and then it gives you all sorts of carbohydrate cravings and so on, then that can be an issue. So if you find that having breakfast sets up the rest of your day better, then yes, you should look at getting breakfast into your day and maybe hit those 3 square meals. In terms of bodybuilders, a lot of them will say, oh, I eat 6 or 7 meals a day. Sometimes that's necessary, because if you're talking about a big guy, getting enough calories in to actually fuel their workouts and so on is pretty difficult to do in just 3 meals, because you end up eating so much food. It takes ages. You're forcing food inside you. You're absolutely stuffed. You're like, damn, I've still got another 1,000 calories to go. So that's where doing that can actually help. But from a the point of view of creating a calorie deficit and what's best over a day, it doesn't really matter from that perspective. Okay, so think about what works for your lifestyle, think about what you can do consistently, and that is what is going to help you get really good results. Because if you can do something for 3, 4, 5, 6 months or your entire life, then that is when you're going to end up living a lifestyle where you're lean pretty much all the time. Okay, if you're forcing yourself to do stuff for a few weeks, then yes, you might get some really good results, but you're just going to slip back to exactly where you were afterwards. Okay, so the actual number of meals from the perspective of creating a calorie deficit really doesn't matter too much. Okay, now part 4 is to do with refeeds, and what we mean by a refeed is a meal or a day where you're actually eating at a higher calorie level and you're not just consistently hitting a calorie deficit day after day after day. Now, some people do this simply as a bit of a break. It's like, look, I'm doing 6 days a week where I'm hitting a calorie deficit, I'm really on point with my nutrition, I'm not eating sugars and cookies and crisps and stuff like that, my carbohydrates are likely lower. So it's often a bit of a day off, and that can help sort of psychologically, but there are also hormonal reasons for doing this. Okay, particularly the leaner you get, the more your body starts to go, hang on, we're not getting enough calories in on consistently we're getting this sort of low calorie level. That's when your metabolic rate can start to change, and we don't want your metabolism to slow down. So having a refeed day can kind of ramp things back up. It affects quite a few different hormones in your body, and essentially your body's going, oh, okay, everything's fine, let's carry on sort of burning body fat, and essentially your internal functions are pumping as they should. However, there are sort of different approaches for different types of people, and by types of people I mean the amount of fat you're actually holding at the moment. So to keep this simple, we talk about 3 different levels effectively. We've got really fat, kind of fat, and already lean. If you are really fat and you've got a lot of body fat to lose, then you're probably not going to need to have a whole day of refeeding, okay? Along with this, a lot of people who are in that state often have bad relationships with food from various angles, and having a day where they just start eating whatever they want can actually throw them off course, and psychologically they go back to where they were. They suddenly start craving all their favourite foods that they're missing. So actually doing a day like that doesn't really help. What helps these kind of people is to say, okay, I can have 1 meal a week where I can eat what I want. You need to keep it under control, so don't go crazy, because again, if you eat a really high sugar meal, high fat, it can do all sorts to your senses and your brain, and then you sort of want to carry on and eat more of those foods. So, maybe just having a pizza, that'll be fine. It's 1 meal a week, go back to what you're doing. Again, it keeps you consistent. If you're looking at say 6 months to a year of dieting, and you're like, what? So I can never eat pizza, I can never eat anything but vegetables and olive oil and proteins. That can be, it can put you off your diet. Okay, so 1 meal a week should be enough. Okay, if you are really fat, if you are very overweight, then that is a good approach to take. If you're kind of a little bit fat, okay, so you're still carrying more body fat than you'd like, you're kind of fat. That's the term I give to this situation. These people do well having a calorie deficit 6 days a week, and then what we call it a refeed day. So that will be a day where you're having sort of 0 to 10% over your maintenance calories. Remember, you worked those out earlier. So we said for me that was going to be maybe 2,500 calories in the example. So I would make sure that on my refeed day, I'm going to have up to 2,750 calories, and I will be making sure that I get enough carbohydrates in as well. Get the pleasure from the carbohydrates, refuel yourself, refuel your muscles, but again, don't go overboard. So know the calories. So for me, we're saying 2,750. I might get half of that from carbohydrates. I'm getting my same levels of protein. We said about 2.5 grams per kilo of lean body mass, and then the rest will be fat. So essentially what we're saying is protein stays the same, and we're almost flipping sort of carbohydrates and fats. One goes up, one goes down. Okay? If we are super lean already, or even just lean, so for guys maybe sort of 10 to 12%, women maybe around the sort of 17 to 20% range, then your body's obviously not carrying lots of energy like our sort of really fat person. So your body needs to get these refeeds in more often. So generally every 4th or 5th day, you want to be having that refeed, okay? Again, that will enable you to maintain muscle mass, train hard, and keep body fat lower. Okay, so that is a very simple approach to refeeding. And then finally, we need to look at long-term planning. Unfortunately, in the fitness industry, the fat loss world, people tend to take too much of a short-term approach. They kind of have this do whatever lifestyle most of the time, and then they'll do these sort of crash diets because they've got a wedding coming up or a holiday, and it's sort of 3 to 6 weeks of intense dieting, and sure, they're going to lose some weight, but as we now know, a lot of bad things could be happening within the body in terms of metabolism, in terms of muscle loss, and because it's just not a sustainable way of living, they end up saying, right, I've had my holiday, now I'm going to go back to what I was doing, and then I'll do a diet again in a few months. And essentially it's just this cycle of getting fat, losing weight, and often, particularly in women as well, you can end up going backwards over time. Because every time you crash diet and then binge, you end up storing more body fat, and this whole process just doesn't really work. Okay, so what I like to do is get people to live within about 0 to 20% calorie deficit, okay? So you're burning more calories than you're taking in. You're focused on clean eating about 90% of the time. You're enjoying certain foods, maybe on a Friday night, or like we said on a Saturday, maybe being a little bit looser. And you're trying to minimize things like gluten, dairy, alcohol, but you can still have a bit of those things. You don't need to try and be perfect all the time. And then what we say is there are these periods where you commit. Okay, 12 weeks tends to work really well. It's long enough to get really good results, really noticeable results, and it's short enough that you can kind of see the end point. And that is where you go all in. You have 100% commitment, you eliminate alcohol, eliminate gluten, eliminate dairy, you hit a calorie deficit of maybe 20 to 30%, so you're just taking it that little bit further, still having your refeeds, but everything is more on point. Okay, so when you do that, is entirely up to you. Obviously, it makes sense for a lot of people to do it coming up to summer. You might choose to do it after Christmas. There's no kind of exact date that you should be doing this, but you need to find what works for you. Again, everything in this video is guidelines. Try it, see how it works for you. You might say, oh, I've been doing it, but I really just, because I train so hard and I'm doing 90-minute sessions, I need a few more carbohydrates in my diet. That's absolutely fine. So bring the fats down a bit. Find what works for you. Okay, what I want you to do is find a long-term process that works for you, almost like an annual plan. So like I just said, maybe you do sort of January, February, March is your sort of more sort of lower level calorie deficit, 20 to 30%. You might take April and May off at more of a sort of, I don't like to call it maintenance because you can still make progress, but it would just be a little bit slower maybe, but you're enjoying life a little bit more. And then you say, okay, right, the next 3 months again, we're coming into summer, I'm going to really sort of nail down, and so on throughout the year. Okay, so think about what's going to work for you. Look at your lifestyle, create your calorie deficit, know how much you should be eating. Definitely know your protein within that. If you want to take it a step further, get a bit more detail with your macronutrients, get your refeeds in, and you're going to find that you make very good progress in the long term. Okay, I hope you find that helpful. Make sure you follow these videos, subscribe to the YouTube channel, get me on Instagram, John Latok. I post daily tips just like these, but in bite-sized format, and hopefully you can keep learning and improving your fitness and your nutrition. Thanks for watching. I'll see you very soon.